Good evening and welcome to KTN. This is KTN Weekend Prime. My name is John Allen Amu. You are on the most qualified bulletin in Kenya. This is the point of news, and we continue with our discussion on the security laws that have just been passed this past Thursday. Aside from the drama on the floor of the National Assembly, what really is the content of the amendments that were made? Were those amendments cosmetic, or are they truly far-reaching in terms of providing the change that people who are against this bill initially were opposed to? For instance, this act behind me on the publishing of reports that are likely to cause threats to public security, to national security. We'll be talking about that with three panelists who know quite a bit about this law, either from experiencing the hard hand of the law or from having been on the floor of the House. That's Irungu Kangata, the MP for Kiharu. We've got Boniface Mwangi, a well-known activist as well as political consultant, Washington Makodingo, in the House tonight on the final edition of Checkpoint for this year. Unfortunately, it is my sad duty to announce that up until next year, there will be no Checkpoint after this weekend. But of course, we've got lots more for you on this bulletin tonight, including Jerry and Wilson's edition of Mock the Week. That one will still be going, as well as the highlights from what happened today on KTN Weekend Prime. So let's get into that right now.
We want to tell them there is nothing to be gained by Kenyans by going the route of mass action or demonstrations.
When people love you, they control you. But when they don't, when they fear you, you control them.
Yet another looming showdown as the new security laws now head to the courts. And just who will tame the rogues in the House of Shame? The police raid a Bhang farm in Nairobi's Lavington area.
A lot of people who have relatives who are having mental breakdown, they want to believe that it is witchcraft.
And who will rescue Kisi's abandoned mental patients? Thank you once again for joining us on KTN Weekend Prime. Our sign language interpreter is William Silla. Let's get into it. Members of Parliament from the Jubilee Coalition say that the opposition is misleading Kenyans on a new security law. The legislators maintain that the law was carefully amended before being approved by Parliament and that it does not infringe on the Bill of Rights. The Jubilee lawmakers want Kenyans to read the new law carefully before taking sides on it and have argued that it will help secure the country against external and internal threats.
If the Coalition for Reform and Democracy make good their threat to go to court, then the new Security Laws Amendment Act is about to get its first litmus test. But the Jubilee Coalition is warning Kenyans to be wary.
It was very important for us as a country to put the blame where it is. We cannot continue asking the president to act with individuals who hold positions with security of tenure.
Unless we tighten the law so that we can stop criminals and terrorists, there is no way law-abiding citizens can enjoy their right to freedom, their right to life, and enjoy the provisions of our Constitution.
Though it carries much of the tone set by the drafters of the bill in the first stage, the new law went through a series of amendments that settled some of the concerns raised by various stakeholders. Part of the anti-terror strategies in the new law are that a national counter-terrorism center will be set up to coordinate security efforts. Public officials found guilty of issuing ID cards irregularly can get up to 15-year jail terms. A person whose premise is found harboring weapons may face up to 30 years in prison. A person promoting ideology based on violence for political, religious, or social change may be jailed for 14 years. A person who publishes or broadcasts insulting, threatening, or inciting material, images of dead or injured persons likely to cause fear, or information that undermines national security can be fined 5 million shillings or face 3 years in jail, or both. The number of refugees and asylum seekers is pinned at a maximum of 150,000, and refugees will not be allowed to leave their camps. On anti-stripping measures, anyone found guilty of forcibly stripping another person is liable to a minimum of 10 years in prison. The provision to give intelligence agencies powers to intercept phone conversation without a court order was dropped. On the issue of detaining terror suspects for more than 24 hours, a police officer would have to justify the case in court before he gets a court order to do so.
Yes.
It has come out very...
The Law Society of Kenya, however, argues that the new act is still unconstitutional and plans to challenge it in court this week.
First, on the issue of the process was wrong, was unconstitutional, there was no public consultation. Secondly, the process in National Assembly was also wrong because there was clear violation of the standing orders.
Observers are warning that the divisions emerging over this new law are not healthy for the nation and that Parliament should consider future amendments to the Act.
The nation is likely to remain divided, and on the strength of a law that does not seem to serve the interests of the people, the execution of that bad law would therefore, moving forward, give room for further amendments, at least when there will be public hue and cry against it.
We should be seeing a very strong border security arrangement. It's not in that bill. We should be seeing better coordination between the county governments and the national government on matters of security. It's not in that bill. We should be seeing better coordination between the agencies within the police, the administration of police and the police. That's not in that bill.
But more than anything, this new law has revealed a new side of the president. Could he have heeded to this advice from political scientist Mutahi Ngunyi when we interviewed him last month?
When people love you, they control you. But when they don't, when they fear you, you control them. Right now, the people are controlling Uhuru because they love him and he's enjoying the love too much. That's why he's getting irritated. What he should do is just abandon the love and say, what? I'm going to do what I need to do.
Its intent is one, just one.
With President Uhuru Kenyatta having put his foot down over the new law, the focus now shifts to the judiciary that could be left arbitrating the differences over the law. Ashamwilu, KTN, Nairobi.
Observers who followed the chaotic proceedings last Thursday have termed the 11th Parliament as a house of shame. Now, others wonder if these actions are punishable by law and who is to blame for the degeneration of debate into physical contests. Francis Mtalaki reports.
These actions by the members of the 11th Parliament have not only raised questions and answers, but even lowered the dignity of the current National Assembly. According to the chair of the Constitution and Implementation Commission, Charles Nyachae, the 349-member House violated Article 73 and 117 of the Constitution that allows them to debate without causing chaos in the House.
Does it promote public confidence in the integrity of the office? And if the answer is no, then clearly there is a violation of the Constitution by every member of Parliament.
Nyachae shares the views of the Ethics and Anti-Corruption boss Momo Matemo, who says the members of Parliament responsible for this ugly incident should be prosecuted, but not everyone agrees.
Then I think the Director of Public Prosecutions has a constitutional responsibility to treat members of Parliament who committed those offences in exactly the same way that he would treat you or I.
Parliament itself has inbuilt processes and procedures to punish errant members of Parliament. And I do not think the EAC is one of the organs mandated to punish MPs.
It is from this perspective that he forced the Speaker of the National Assembly, Justin Muturi, for what he terms as lack of leadership.
Parliament must keep its house in order. And the buck stops with the Speaker of the National Assembly. He must rein in on errant members of Parliament.
Mosota argues that the standing orders are to blame, just as the incident demonstrated lack of trust to the Speaker of the National Assembly on the decision he is likely to make.
And this he can do so if his own actions attract respect. Currently, he's not in charge of the House. He is overwhelmed by his own members of parliament.
Kenyans knew the debate over the controversial security law will be heated, but the paper throwing, finger biting, fist fighting and water throwing took everyone by surprise.
Kwa kweli inaudhi, kwa sababu ni watu tuliwachagua na ni watu wanafaa kutupa mwelekeo, si wenye kupoteza mwelekeo.
Wakati mwingine mimi sioni kama tutawachagua tena, kozi sasa wakifanya hivyo na sisi tutafanya nini hapa nje?
Francis Mtelaki, KTN.
Police officers from Mudhangari Police Station today raided a farm in Nairobi's Lavington area and uprooted Bhang, whose street value is estimated at 1.5 million shillings. The officers discovered the farm when they responded to complaints from a person who had claimed that he had been denied access into the compound to recover his steel metals. The farmhand, Patrick Kibila, told police officers that he smokes Bhang to boost his energy levels. Kibila said he was a caretaker of the plot, which is believed to belong to a Kenyan of Asian origin. The over 300 stems of Bhang were intercropped with maize in a 1-acre plot. Police uprooted the Bhang and arrested the farmhand and his colleague.
Somebody had kept some metals in this compound, so he wanted, for safekeeping, that is, so he wanted this gentleman to release the metals to him. So when the person came, this gentleman refused to give the metals, prompting him to go to Mudhangari police and make a formal complaint there. So when the police came, is when they bumped into this cannabis sativa. And then we were called. We are here at the scene. We will place him under arrest. We have already placed him under arrest, and he'll be charged with being in possession of cannabis sativa and even planting. As you can see, these ones were for. This one is for. This one has been prepared. It is in the process of being prepared.
Property worth millions of shillings was destroyed this morning after a fire gutted the auctions market near Nyayo Market in Gara. Firefighters were unable to contain the fire, fueled by wooden structures and second-hand clothes in the stalls. According to some of the traders at the market, the fire started at about 4:30 a.m. However, some traders managed to salvage their property, and they blame the Nairobi City Council officers for delays in responding to the crisis. The cause of the fire is yet to be known.
Hapa tuko peke yetu, hakuna mtu wa kusaidia. Watu kama wakifika hapa saa 10 saa ile walipigiwa simu. Hai. Tungekuwa kwa hali.
Moto ulianza kitu moja.
Moto ulianza saa 10. Saa 11 na walipigiwa simu lakini hawataki kukuja.
Kwa nini wanakataza watu kuja kuzima moto? Watu gani wamekatazwa? Watu wa private wanakatazwa kuzima moto. JK, G4S ndio wanazimanga moto. City Council tukapasuka zote. City Council are just there to eat and sleep. Hapa ni distance gani iko hapa kutoka City Hall? Hao watu waache kuchezea watu.
Most unfortunate for the traders, especially at this time. And even as many Kenyans embrace the festive season, a group of people in Kisii will be spending yet another Christmas away from their families. About 26 people are still at the Kisii hospital despite being discharged after recovery from mental illnesses. KTN's Fred Moturi reports.
As with any such health institution, this mental unit is not without its share of patients being abandoned. The Kisii Teaching and Referral Hospital has for years been home to abandoned patients, some people who no longer need to be here. According to hospital records, there are sometimes up to 50 patients in this unit that has a capacity of only 20 beds. Currently, there are at least 26 abandoned patients here. The facility introduced the option of open wards, where family members are allowed to stay with their sick relatives. Some family members stay for only a few days and then vanish.
I have on a larger picture, mental illness has not been fully accepted in Kisii community. It is highly stigmatized. A lot of people who have relatives who are having mental breakdown, they want to believe that it is witchcraft.
Bound by their Hippocratic oath, the doctors cannot evict the patients.
Papa yangu alikufa 1996. Pia my mom alikufa 1993. Wote walikufa sina wazazi. Sasa nakwanga tu hapa hospitali tu nakwanga wanakuja my aunties wananiona kidogo, my uncles wananiona wanatoroka. Mimi nashindwa sasa maisha gani nitakaa katika hii ward.
The community regards the mentally challenged people as a bad omen. This compounds the challenge of integrating them back into society.
So you find those who recover, who need to join the family members at home, are left with us, where relatives want even to disown that those are not their kin.
Kulikuwa na mwanadada alikuwa Kisii, akakuwa mgonjwa na hiyo shida ya mental, akakuwa kwa ward karibu mwaka mzima. Bwanake alimutoroka, akamleta hospitali, akamwacha huko, ikanibidi nikamchukua mpaka kwao.
In special circumstances, the hospital has waived charges for some of these patients. It, however, requires the involvement of the provincial administration. This has, however, also raised other issues.
The ladies usually they walk around, they are never accepted, so they get unnecessary pregnancies and they get babies who don't have care themselves. They have nobody to care for them, and they create more problems.
Most of those who are discharged seldom return for follow-up medical visits.
Because they are not accepted, they are never followed for clinic, because we usually give them follow-ups. Some don't even get a fund of coming to the clinic to visit the hospital as it is indicated.
George Mugo, a project coordinator with the Social Life organization that majors in community psychiatry, said that his organization has offered to pay the National Hospital insurance for all the mentally challenged individuals here.
I'm supporting them to pay the NHIF, and we have also from Kisii we're going to pick 20. We can ease the burden of the abandonment of these people in the streets and any other place.
What remains is for the relatives of these patients to avoid seeking services of the witch doctors, so as to break the stigma associated with the condition and their trigger factors. Fred Muturi, KTN, Kisii.
Well, mental health challenges are so many, and that is indeed one perspective on those challenges. Thank you very much for that story, Fred Muturi. But we roll on, and right after the break, Checkpoint is back, and you can follow the conversation on #Checkpoint. We are discussing those new security laws, and right now we've got in studio all of our guests, Mark Odingo, Washington. We've also got Boniface Mwangi, as well as Kiharu MP Irungu Kangata, who are going to be talking about whether those laws truly are going to help transform this country in terms of fighting terror. That's after the break on Checkpoint. Stay with us. Just ahead on Checkpoint, views and reviews on the new security laws coming up on Checkpoint.
You are watching KTN Weekend Prime.
All right, if you see on the blue and the red, you know it's time for Checkpoint, and tonight we're having a discussion still on the Security Laws Amendment Act that was just passed in Parliament last Thursday. Are the amendments that were made to the original act that was put before the House sometimes earlier in December, were they really far-reaching in changing the things that needed to be changed, or do we still have a law that Kenyans, by and large, quite a number of them, would not be satisfied with? That's what we're discussing today. And Right next to me is the Member of Parliament for Kiharu, a man who was on the floor of the National Assembly during the throwing of papers and the passing of the bill. Mr. Irungu Kangata, thanks very much for joining us. Right in the center is a man who is no stranger to controversy, at least in the work that he does, activist Boniface Mwangi. Thanks once again for joining us on Checkpoint. And not a stranger to Checkpoint either, Washington Makodingo, political consultant, here to discuss the if, buts, and the maybes, as well as perhaps his own perspective on what these laws portend for Kenya. And let's start with what's on our Super Bowl right now. There were quite a number of rafts of laws that had problems with them, and this one was specific to an industry that gives you the benefit of what we're doing right now, talking. And it was in the Prevention of Terror Act. The ones in green are what have been added in the recent amendment. A person who publishes, broadcasts, or causes to be published or distributed through print, digital, or electronic means insulting, threatening, or inciting material or images or dead and injured persons which are likely to cause fear and alarm to the general public, upon conviction is liable, commits an offense, and upon conviction is liable to have a fine of 5 million shillings or imprisonment of a term not exceeding 3 years or both. Let's start with that, because that, to quite a number of people, confronts the one tenet that a lot of people fought for, which is freedom of speech, freedom of the press. Let's start with you, Irungu. What do you think of that amendment? Do you think that it addresses what needs to be addressed in the fight against terror?
Yes, indeed. Personally, I don't see there is any problem with that provision because, well, some of the words which appear to be subjective in that provision, their parameters, their meanings is going to be set by what we call precedent in the court of law. So meaning we should not really be worried about the words which are appearing to be subjective. It is the courts which are going to set the boundaries, the parameters.
But what if the precedent that is set is so extreme that that is what is followed from then onwards?
Well, the presumption is that we have liberal courts. Of course, the courts are enjoined to interpret statutes or even the Constitution in a liberal manner. So in our understanding is that the courts are going to be guided by the liberal spirit, which is contained in the Constitution.
All right, there's another part of this same act, if we can just get it on screen, that talks about what we can and can't publish as members of the public. If we can just get it on screen now for the benefit of everybody. Person who publishes or broadcasts any information which undermines investigations or security operations by the National Police Service, and included now all the Kenya Defence Forces, commits an offence and is liable upon conviction to a fine not exceeding 5 million shillings or an imprisonment of a term not exceeding 3 years or both. Boniface, do you think that we need permission to be able to publish things about national security?
No, we don't need permission. I think what's going to happen, you have to stop doing investigative journalism. On the first other law, you have to stop taking pictures of when there's a terror attack, you can't even take pictures. And what he talks about liberal courts, I want to go back, slightly back a bit, and talk about 8 young men who were arrested last week. They went to a liberal court where a robbery with violence suspect was released on a 10,000 shillings bond, and these protesters were released on a 300,000 bond. That means that when you have those open-ended laws, they're subject to interpretation. And who decides what is offensive, what is disturbing? Are you going to have a committee of people sit down and say that's disturbing? I think these laws are actually going infringing on freedom of speech and freedom of expression. Our government is fighting for legitimacy, and our government suffers from self-esteem issues. So these are self-esteem laws to feel legitimate.
All right, very interesting. Makodingo, let's bring you into this. We all remember what happened with Westgate last year, and there were examples of what the media should and shouldn't have done. But the overall effect of the coverage of Westgate was that without the media, there were very many things about Westgate that would not have come to light. Do you think that with a law like this in future, if something like Westgate were to occur, unfortunately, in this country again, that could be the case?
Thank you. Let's look at the intent of these sections. The first one was meant. The way terrorism works is that they need publicity. They kill 20 people. They need it splashed to newspapers, circulating on social media, because that is how they terrorize you. You see that happening, and you walk out of malls, you stay at home, you don't go to public places, and they use it to also recruit others, you know, recruit others, get more money for their causes because they're saying they're effective. You stop that from happening, they won't have incentive. I mean, if you kill people, 100 people somewhere, and nobody knows about it, there is no incentive to continue doing what you're doing. So the intent was, one, to discourage terrorists, but also to give Kenyans an opportunity to deal with some of these things. Now, I know they're saying that you need permission, needed permission from the National Police Service, and even the victims. This only happens in Kenya, that you find someone has just escaped a terrorism attack, and 5 minutes later they're being interviewed. Yeah, on live TV, the coverage is beamed to everybody else. They haven't even been cancelled. They don't even know what they're talking about. Yeah. For me, I think we have to draw a line. The media has to draw a line. I think it's unfortunate that we have to legislate so that this cannot be done. I thought that is what self-regulation should have done.
All right.
Now, secondly, on investigations.
Yeah.
You do not want to go telling terrorists that the police are tracking their phones, for example, or someone got into the country with explosives. They are sitting somewhere in a hotel in Mombasa. Police are investigating, the investigations are not complete, and you're already going out there telling people that the police are investigating a house in Mombasa that they suspect has explosives. Do you expect them to go there tomorrow and actually find those explosives?
Okay, that presumes that the police would be doing their job in the right manner. And the question that I posed to you was specific to something that has become endemic with the police, which is corruption leading to ineffectiveness in the execution of its mandate. If the police are ineffective in countering terrorism, shouldn't we know about it?
I think it's not. I think our security architecture is overwhelmed. Yeah, with the terrorism. I don't think we have done enough in terms of detection of crime, and I think part of the amendments that are brought onto this bill were to give the police and NIS the capacity to actually just do that, so that we are prepared for these people before the attacks take place.
We'll get to that in a moment. Bonnie, I just want you to respond, but there's also a corollary to that argument. We saw the siege in Sydney and how it was covered. Glowing tributes to the media for the restraint, the media there for the restraint with which they showed in covering that siege, which turned out to be one associated with terrorism. Do you think on that strength alone these bills should be able to stand?
I don't think so. So let me say this. We are willing to lose some freedoms for the sake of security. That's given. We want to do that. But when you come and say that we are going to censor you what you can be able to air or broadcast, that goes to another extent that the government knows that it has failed to protect its own citizens. And number two, there's not a single of these laws could have prevented Westgate, Mpeketoni, or Baragoi, or any of the terror attacks. Because even if you had these laws and even address corruption, this will always happen. You said something that we actually need to go back to, corruption. Corruption is the biggest problem in this country. And without addressing corruption, even in legislation, selfies, websites, speeches, threats won't stop it.
Irungu, corruption. I mean, that really is the big elephant in the room, especially with regard to these laws. I think there's maybe one or two areas that addresses corruption at length in these laws, and yet everybody, including the president, agrees that that is the one problem with our security agencies. Do you think that these laws are going to go in any way to addressing corruption?
Well, to me, the issue of corruption and the issue of these laws are two different issues. Because, for instance, you cannot say we are not going to provide a law to capture thieves because police are always going to become corrupt. You cannot say, for instance, we should ban or even do away with traffic police because they are always doing corrupt things. So therefore, let us put a line between the issues of corruption and the issue of this.
Can I ask him a question?
In my own opinion.
Can I ask him?
In my own opinion, these laws, in terms of implementation, if they are indeed implemented to the letter, they are very good laws. As to whether the police are going to become corrupt or not, well, to me, that's another issue which we can address, and I concede we need to do more to ensure that our police are not as corrupt
Bonnie
as
wanted
they
to jump in and ask him a
How
question.
will the laws prevent terror attacks?
Well, number one, it is very clear the old laws which were there, which we were repealing, they tended to disperse power. So that, for instance, the person in charge of our security system is that person does not have powers to transfer this officer. That person, for instance, in terms of disciplining an officer, is fettered. But now, when it's come to the issue of security, you need to concentrate power upon one entity, so that one entity can be able to give orders which can be respected, and that person when there are security lapses, then you can be able to put that person into account. So, sorry,
wasn't this the entire point of putting those structures in place, to run away from the concentration of power around one person? Isn't that the whole point, especially in terms of this constitution? You can answer, and then we'll get Makodingo to talk about the same.
The point is, it is impossible, practically impossible, in a country that is facing terrorism issues or constantly having security problems, to disperse power. Because the issue of dispersal of power, in my own opinion, came about out of the Kanu misrule. And I agree it was wrong. You see, you would imagine during the Kanu rule, that power was concentrated in one entity, so therefore that entity tended to abuse power. Now, the reason why we think probably we need to take some of the good practices which were there then is because of this new emerging issue of terror. Of terrorism. If at all there was no terror, I can tell you we had no reason to do the amendments. Okay. But now with the terrorism, we need now to look at the structure of our security system.
Our security agencies. Makodingo, do you think that it is necessary to concentrate power around one individual, be it the Inspector General or the President himself, in dealing with terrorism-related issues and insecurity generally, and to put it in the law?
Security is not... First of all, we have said that the buck stops with the president on insecurity or, otherwise.
Yes.
But the law we made, the constitution we made, was extremely ambitious. On security, it was pure activism. Yeah? I mean, the notion that the president will be responsible for security, but not actually be able to even give orders to the Inspector General, for example, to do something, that in fact, he could have an Inspector General, he literally can't fire. Yeah? The IG could only give orders to 2 people.
But weren't there provisions within the NPS Act on how the president could get rid of the Inspector General?
The Constitution says if he's incompetent, gross misconduct and everything.
Yes.
Then the Act...
Wouldn't you then characterize what happened over the past year with regard to our security agencies, either incompetence or one of those problems that
actually it was all the reasons
all
the Constitution lists, all of them actually.
So the president had a mandate to act.
Yes, but the problem is the Act made it extremely difficult for him to actually act, because the Act required a lengthy process of a tribunal, going to Parliament. The president should be able to fire the Inspector General if he's not working. Now the Act, even the law makes it even worse, by the way. Yeah? The IG technically could not find a police officer on the road and fire them and give them an order, because he had to act through his deputy inspectors. So essentially, Kimayo could only give orders to 2 people. But I think Kimayo himself and the way they structured, the way we've taken time to structure the leadership of the police was in itself a mess.
Could that have been done without changing the law at least in coordination with, for instance, the Police Service Commission, to be able to put in place a structure that is effective? Structures don't necessarily have to depend on changes of law, do they?
Yeah, but you see, the problem with the disciplined services and the police specifically is this notion that we have 2 services, the administration police and the regular services, and the 2 services are not answerable to each other. I have gone to counties, in a recent study, I have gone to counties where the AP and the regular police do not see eye to eye.
Yes.
You go to a county, you have 2 county commanders. There's a county commander for AP, county commander for police. Yeah, they were appointed in a rush. So in fact, you find in certain instances, in a lot of them actually, the county police commander and the OCPD are of the same rank. In fact, in certain instances, there's a county I went to where the OCPDs, all the OCPDs under the county commander are older, more experienced than the county commander. So we had problems that we needed to sort out through the Act. Yeah? And I think the Act has. Now, you asked if this Act would have stopped Westgate and probably Mpeketoni. I'm not so sure about
all of these other attacks. Yeah.
I think it could. If the information we have is correct, I think it could. Because you remember NIS complaining that they had given pretty good information that was not acted on.
Yes.
What the Act has done is that now it enables NIS to not just give information, but if they see a terrorist or they suspect someone is a terrorist, they can arrest and then take them to a police station, so that the police will no longer say that we got information that was not actionable. Yeah? And I think those are part of the problems we needed to address, and we need to address them urgently. This is not something that could have waited. Because terrorists are not sitting somewhere in Somalia waiting for ourselves to sort the mess that we have insecurity for them to attack us.
Speaking of the NIS, let's just go to the next slides and look at that law. In fact, that's another law that was quite seriously contested. And these are the key amendments. We're not going to read the entire law. And NIS officers cannot arrest and detain, but arrest and hand over to the nearest police station. Covert operations now changed to special operations. And NIS in special operations must obtain warrants for searches and for getting information, moving, recording, that sort of thing. But that still is in conjunction with the acts of one person, the Director General of the NIS, in terms of giving those kinds of orders, right? Have we still addressed the human rights gap that existed with the original act, where the NIS Director General would, upon his orders, give these sweeping powers to individuals to be able to do pretty much anything that they wanted?
Well, firstly, let me say this amendment is a very good one. In terms of now the issue of these entities saying that they gave information, that information was not acted upon, has now gone away. That's number one. Number two, I think the checks and balances contained in this provision, they are sufficient, in the sense that, as you can see at number 3, of course they have to do that in conjunction with a warrant given by a court. Number 3, we must also not look at this law in isolation to other entities which exist to check on the abyss of state power. For instance, we have the office of the Ombudsman. We also have the Kenya National Human Rights Commission. Meaning, if you feel the police or even the state is abusing its powers, you have the recourse to go to those entities.
But specific to NIS officers, a lot of them act covertly, and the NIS Act specifically protects a lot of the covert actions that they take that they do. Where would the accountability fall then, if we're talking about accountability coming from the Ombudsman and from other state actors, if you don't even know what these people are doing?
No, you can't say that. Number one, you can see we have changed that now. It's no longer covert operation. It is now being deemed as special. Meaning,
intelligence officers around the world act in a covert manner. That's how a lot of them are able to get information.
For instance, we were engaging in some language games. No, there was very clear purpose as to why we changed from covert to
special. What was that reason? Just
no, the rationale is very simple. It's no longer secretive per se. It is something now that is, you can now ask the officer to account. You can demand, for instance, for a search warrant. You understand? But you see, when you talk about covert, it means there will be little interaction between the officer and the person to be arrested. But now when you talk of a special, it means, one, you can demand a warrant from the officer. But number two, that person is going to take you to the police station. He is going to do a recording at the OB. Previously, under the old laws, they could not do that. They could arrest you without even recording at the OB.
Let me say this. NIS is already covered on that, because right now, if you actually go to the police, or in case they arrest you, and you go to the media, if it's under national security, the media can't document that. They can't talk about it. So you go back to the days of special branch, where they used to pick you up and lock you up, and now they can hold you for more than 24 hours. They can hold you for 90 days.
No.
I think
it is not.
That is not true. I think part of the problem with the debate on this bill has been lack of information, in my opinion. I think especially post amendments, because a lot of amendments were done to actually protect human rights and to protect us from the excesses. Now, NIS gets a budget of nearly 18 billion shillings. A lot of us, a lot of the people we know, sit in bars and just drink. We want accountability. But as it is now, originally close, I think it was clause 62, the one that was saying they could do anything. They could arrest you for anything, and detain you. And there wasn't anything saying what they will do with you. I mean, that was reminiscent of Nyayo era days. Now, it says, and it's very specific, by the way, it's just specific to terrorism, and other heinous crimes, so to speak. And when they have information that you're a threat to national security, they will arrest you and they will hand you over to the police. Now, the police have to produce you in court within 24 hours. If there is a need for them to detain you longer, they'll have to ask the court, apply to the court to grant an order, a 10, 20 day, up to 365 days of detention. But that determination is not made by the police. The determination is made by the court, to detain you, which is why, and I think that is where the checks are coming in. We involve the judiciary so that someone else,
would be able to check.
Should be able to check that the police have sufficient evidence. And in fact, it actually says that they need to show you, and you can contest it. You can contest the order for detention. With your lawyer, they'll give you the information that they have, as long as that information is not
sensitive, and that I think is done in evidence rules as well. But let me just compare something that's being compared, especially by people from within Jubilee, especially after the statement from the U.S. State Department came out criticizing parts of these laws, that the Patriot Act is far worse than this. And in many respects, it just might be so. But especially with respect to monitoring of communication, they are very specific on what kind of communication can be monitored, in what circumstances, what judges would be able to give the kinds of orders that you would require to monitor that information. Right now, monitoring information there means anything really. And doesn't that also rub some of the rights that we should have in terms of our rights to privacy the wrong way?
To me, in my own opinion, I think we should again resort to the courts to interpret that provision.
Yes.
Because we have what we call a precedent, and in my own opinion, I don't foresee a reasonable court interpreting that provision to mean that the officers or even the state can look at any of your communication. To me, I believe, in my own opinion, we shall have boundaries. I'm sure there are areas that the state cannot go. That's number one. Number two, when you compare American law, and again, this Kenyan law, there's no doubt about it. This one is more liberal. This one has more checks and balances as opposed to the American system. Let me give you a good example. In America, for instance, they can detain you without trial. For instance, we have the Guantanamo Bay in Cuba. In Kenya, I don't foresee any kind of treatment that can be made against any citizen, whether foreigner or even Kenyan.
But
so
even
we have
within
a better
those Patriot laws, there were certain laws that had a shelf life, about 5 years, that would give mandates to specific agencies to do certain things, but that would fall, would become useless after a certain period of time. These laws are being put in posterity. I mean, there are certain places that we can compare and contrast, but isn't there still room to be able to tighten these laws a little bit?
Well, fine. Of course, after 10 or even 5, if Kenyans feel that indeed we need to do away with some of these laws, they'll pressurize us. We shall amend. In any event, these laws are yet to take effect. So probably we need to give them some time. If at all we think that we need to revise some of those laws, we shall ultimately do that.
All right. Let's come to the human element in terms of implementation of the law. We all touched on it a little earlier. And you said that corruption within the police and these laws should not be construed to be one and the same. Yet there are always overlaps, especially in the more recent terror attacks that we've seen. There has been a very serious element of corruption. What, though, is being done legislatively to address that problem?
One, personally, I remember I took a proposal to amend the relevant anti-corruption law to enhance the penalty for grave corruption. For some reasons, it was rejected. I intend to revisit that issue again probably after the 6 months, as provided by the standing orders. That's number one. Number two, of course, you media, you have a role towards probably telling Kenyans, those police officers or even any government official who is doing corruption. Number three, we have seen the president, we have seen the deputy president being very strong when it's come to the issue of inefficiency and the issue of corruption.
Yeah, being very strong to the extent of complaining about it, but where's the action? I mean, 2 years down the line, we remember the president complained about corruption in his own office. And yet, to this day, we really don't know what happened with that. We've heard about corruption with respect to terrorism and insecurity. Bonnie, I'll just come to you in a moment, and you raise this point before I go to Makodingo. What needs to happen within our security agencies to be able to once and for all, or at least by and large, get rid of the problem of corruption?
I think you need to address the poor pay. That's one of the biggest issues. They're poorly paid, they're poorly housed, they're poorly equipped, they're poorly trained, they're not motivated, and they have to rely on bribes for them to actually sustain their lives. and there's a lot of loopholes for them to get money, because you know very well that if you go to court, it's a very long, protracted process. So you actually pay bribes to actually make it easy. I think the government should make it easy for me to pay my penalty if I break the law. That needs to happen. The second thing, that the president needs to stop fighting corruption with rhetoric and speeches. There needs to be action. This is second day in office. We haven't had a single conviction on corruption. No one has been jailed. So all he has done is that website that he did, and the speeches. And I don't think even these new laws are going to make someone not take a bribe. So if you actually, then police reforms. I hope the next Inspector General is going to come, will have legitimacy to actually lead the police force. Because at the moment, there's been a lot of issues that the junior officers want a civilian police force, because they think a civilian did not come up through the ranks, is not corrupt.
And therefore doesn't have the authority to lead them. And
there's no actually baggage. So if you can actually get a civilian police chief, that would actually be very helpful, because this person comes from the civilian side and comes and actually reforms. Because if you look at the way officers live, look at the Liboy border, they live like chicken. They live very badly.
Would a civilian police Inspector General resolve that, Boni?
Because I think there's no connection to the corruption networks of the police force. If you look at the IPOA report on the Baragoi killings and Lam, we can see the entrenched corruption in the police force. So I don't think there's anyone who is fit to serve.
Interestingly that you mentioned Baragoi, the person who, I forget his name now, very infamous guy.
The one in prison.
Who was he's a civilian.
And he was an assistant police general. What is the name of this guy?
Waiganjo. He was given the role of a reservist, and yet he wasn't really a reservist. So anyway, the argument about civilians.
If you get a qualified civilian to reform the force, that's all you need to do. A civilian who actually, because there's actually standing orders. There are actually orders that you can actually follow. You don't actually have to be a police officer to lead a police
follow
service.
Those orders, Makodingo, I can see you itching to jump in.
I think this is part of our problem. That we imagine that we'll get some corporate honcho to come to the police and reform it. The corporate world is the most corrupt. It's more corrupt than government is. In fact, if the corporate world wasn't corrupt, there will be no corruption in government, because they're the ones paying the bribes. We need to appreciate that the police service, as it is now, have some extremely competent and very good officers. I've traveled in counties. I've dealt with security people, so I know. I can name off my hand, one hand, OCPDs I have met that are extremely good. We need to find someone within the service, that understands the police work, that understands the problems that the officers have, and make them Inspector General. This notion that we keep going to the military to pick someone, or every time we have a problem, we imagine that when you bring someone from outside, what are you telling the rest of those people that are in there? But secondly,
but there's an argument about decentralization of policing in this country and taking it down to county level, so that the police officers that police you are more accountable to you. Do you think that could work in terms of resolving corruption?
But as it is, police services are decentralized. The police are on the ground. They are out there. I think we need to address actual problems. I've had counties, governors saying, give us responsibility over security. Half of this country, is either conflict prone, or outrightly have conflict. A lot of these counties do. A lot of these governors were people who were elected on the basis of an ethnic or a clan alliance. Can you imagine, for example, if, let's just say, in Mandera, for example, that the governor was responsible for security during the Moyale fight? What would have happened? We need to remove security from politics. And I think this is the part that we seem to forget. Politicians cannot handle security.
So the president is a politician, and they're appointing the IG.
But I think there is something else about police that we need to seriously think about. How do we get police officers? I mean, who gets there? For a long time, I think for like forever, the police is where you go when you have nothing else. When you have failed, you cannot even go to a college or anything.
There are no other options.
You go to the police.
Yeah.
Why is it we can't get graduates and pay police officers like we pay doctors?
I'll leave you to make those in your final comments. Now we have to go into that. Wanakangata, I want you to comment about precedent that you had talked about in the courts. Should it happen in 2015, because that's when the laws probably will be operationalized most? Should it happen that the precedent in court would be that human rights abuses would be enforced by those rulings, and that really the worst case scenario would happen? Would you be the first to stand and ask for a repeal of these laws?
Yes, of course. First and foremost, I would imagine the interaction between those laws and the citizen is going to start happening in 2015.
Yeah.
So therefore, I would imagine those citizens who interact with that law, they will go to the court, and therefore I foresee judgments and rulings coming up in 2015. From those judgments and rulings, we shall be able to know the breadth of that law, the efficacy of human rights protection in Kenya.
Yeah.
And then on number 2, yes, first and foremost, I'm a very strong human rights defender. There's no way I can support a law that is going to take us back. And personally, I feel this law is very good, taking into account the kind of attacks that we have been receiving. And if there was no terror in Kenya, there was no reason for us to do the amendments.
All
So
right.
those amendments, they have come because of the so-called problems that we are having.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Bonnie, there were a number of people who wanted to make their submissions about this law. As you wind up, now that the time for submissions has passed and perhaps legal action like LSK is threatening to take would be an option, are you going to be among the people who would take legal action to ensure that these laws aren't enacted?
So I know court is going to court concerning the same. I think what you need to do is actually push the laws. We break the unjust laws and see what's going to happen next. So break the unjust law, let's see what the court decides.
All right, proposing for breaking of unjust law. I wonder how many people will stand with you on that.
I'll break them. I'll go take pictures and share them on social media. I'll keep on commenting on what's going on in the country. I'll name names. I'll tweet. I'll Facebook. I'll do pictures. And I'll do graffiti.
All right. Bonnie, okay, in 2015 it ought to be a very interesting year for you. Makodingo, as you wind up, we've spoken about the human element of that would be the hand that really implements these laws. Where do you think the president as well as parliament and all the agencies need to apply focus for these laws to actually come to life and act in the manner that you envisage them?
I think we need to strengthen the coordination mechanism between the security agencies. They need to set up, the coordinating body fast, very fast. I think we need to appoint an IG quickly, so that then we can fast track the police reforms and probably modernize the police better. We need to do something about our border. Our border with Somalia. At some point, I think I even imagined a wall would probably, help. But there are drones. There's better technology today. So I think we need to work. We need to seriously think about our borders. I think we can beat this. I think we have the law in place. I think there is enough police officers who are dedicated, who want to serve Kenyans, and they are serving Kenyans under very difficult circumstances and conditions. I think we just need to encourage them. Corruption we need to deal with. And I think on corruption, there are other people we also need to deal with. The office of the Director of Public Prosecutions. I don't remember him, prosecuting anyone.
All right.
So, I mean, we need to do something about that.
Okay, I think we'll leave it at that. That's a wish list for 2015 from Makodingo, Washington. Very, very special thanks for joining us on this last edition of Checkpoint for the year. Irungo Kangata, the same. Thank you very much for joining us, as well as you, Boniface Mwangi. Let's hope to see you in 2015, possibly not behind bars. and abiding by the law, but complaining about the ones that are
breaking the
problems.
unjust laws.
All right. Okay, but in every conversation that we have here on KTN Weekend Prime on Checkpoint, there is a point to this conversation. So what is the point on this conversation that we just had with respect to security, the security laws? And the first one is about the human factor, what Makodingo spoke about, the human factor in policing and insecurity. That needs to be addressed. That an entire recruitment drive for 10,000 police officers wound up in not a single one being appointed or being recruited because of corruption points to a very serious scandal, not just there, but with the kind of police officers that we are looking to attract, as well as the kind of officers who are in there. So that is something that perhaps needs to be dealt with in 2015 and going forward. Secondly, there's something that we did not address on this panel tonight, but for a very specific reason, because it would have distracted from what we wanted to talk about, and that is the manner in which parliamentarians acted on Thursday. Whether or not you are against or for the bill, there are laws and standing orders within parliamentary procedure that guide how people should act. That was shameful by any measure and by any standard, and all of the parliamentarians on both sides who acted in such a manner as to bring down the reputation of Kenya in front of the world need to think about their actions. Finally, laws being made for posterity or for convenience. We need to think about the kind of laws we're implementing and what effect they will have, not just in the short term, but for posterity. Are we legislating things that in law we will not be able to reverse later on in our future? Those are things we need to ponder on when we go forward into the implementation of this and other laws. And that is the point. All right, welcome back to KTN Weekend Prime. Following some of your feedback from Checkpoint, a discussion that we just had, quite a number of tweets coming in. Giorgio Karaoke says, yes, we do. All that we need to was apply the law to the letter and deal ruthlessly with our inside and outside enemies. There's quite a bit of feedback also coming in about the comments on Boniface Mwangi's proposal to break the unjust laws. Those I will not read. You can go to the hashtag and read them for yourself. But Silvanus Wakesa says, what happens to parliamentary privileges? EFS did the same in South Africa, even though they didn't fight physically. I think they're talking about the fights that broke out on Parliament. But you can keep your feedback coming through on the hashtag at hashtag Checkpoint, and I'll try and read some of them before we wind up this bulletin. Now, if you want to see animals hunting down their prey in all their wild glory, all you need to do is switch on the National Geographic channel. However, this channel is not available to everybody, but luckily for you and I, getting to see humans behaving like wild animals is not out of reach. Wilson Boro explains in this week's episode of Mock the Week.
A very good evening to you and welcome to Mock the Week. My name is Jerry Muchura, and as you can see, I am still sitting in for one Wilson Boro, who is now lost. Honestly, we do not know where this Wilson character is. The last time we heard, he quit the GSU, and now...
Nimekuchagua wewe. Nikupende Brenda. Sasa, tuko poa, tunarekod. Tuko tayari? Jerry.
Hi.
How are you?
How's it?
I have missed you. By the way, very good job. Last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Awesome work. I especially liked the... Is this thing recording? Is this camera on? Are you...
Well, let's just
are we recording?
Well, we know. We didn't know where you are. Plus, this desk feels so new.
This, Jerry, go away.
No, no.
Oh, hell
no.
Jerry, this
No.
is my desk.
No, 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 no. This, no,
Not
no,
kidding. It's
no.
my desk. Get away. Go away. Go away. Get. Yeah.
No.
It's my desk. Very good. Let's just do this very quickly. Oh, yeah. Very well. Let's just do this. All right. Right there. There you go. Whew. Well, so. I really have missed this desk. Well, very good evening to you and welcome.
No.
You know, I don't know. I wonder whether we are going to...
No.
Oh, dear Lord. I don't even know whether we are going to have a peaceful show tonight.
Never.
Just give me a second. Let's just take care of this.
Me mama is Al-Qaeda. Hey, Al-Qaeda. Hey, me papa is Al-Qaeda.
Welcome back. You're still watching Mock the Week. At least we have a bit of peace after that after that small problem was taken care of. Anyway, let's get right to it. Let me ask you a question. Can ODM hold peaceful primaries?
Never.
Let's pause this thing right there. Let me explain how we got here. This guy exited the scene and went to be with the Lord. Then it was said that this guy might be interested in that seat in Homa Bay. Then he came out and said maybe not.
I will therefore have to let down the elders and leaders of Homa Bay and the MPs who showed faith in me for the Senate seat.
So, all the interested parties started doing a happy dance.
I like to move it. You like to move it. All girls all over the world.
But that happy dance would not last for long because, as we all know,
ODM nominations have had issues. The contest is usually very hot.
Let's recap what we know so far, shall we? There's a vacant seat in the Senate previously held by an ODM bigwig. Baba is not running, so there's no clear favorite, and Baba admits that the nominations are bound to be extremely hot. Everything seems to be perfect here. What really could go wrong?
Some MPs went and sat down, brought their people.
Instead of behaving like civilized people, those who decided to vie for the seat figured that the best way to go about it would be to throw chairs, kick ballot boxes, and get police to fire gunshots in order for them to behave. And after they were done fighting,
there is no party which can conduct an election within 2 weeks. IEBC would like ODM to fail so that they say that we are a party incapable of handling our own internal democracy.
Two things. One, Mr. Mbadi, you can actually conduct elections in a day, leave alone 2 weeks. All you have to do, and listen to this carefully, is stop fighting. Two, Madam Wanga here has a valid point. The IEBC would want to say that ODM cannot have internal democracy. Let's see, I seem to remember a similar situation at the beginning of the year.
Don't cause commotion here. Where is the security?
Whose fault was this? Huh? Who did this? Was it the IEBC? Wait a minute. Did the IEBC send in those men in black?
Never, never, never.
Oh dear. Jerry, I've given up on this. You know, this ODM saga, I mean, it must have been the worst we have seen from our politicians. Huh? Huh? Oh, sorry. Just. All right. You okay? Everything all right? Then let's just, very well.
You thought that was war? Oh my gosh, you must be high on some very cheap things.
Jerry, first of all, I can't. Stop telling me I use drugs. My mother is watching.
Well, our legislators have been threatening to blow each other's heads off, right?
Okay.
And now we have seen the true colors. You guys, these fellows decided that words were not sufficient and resorted to, let's call it, advanced conflict resolution tactics.
Wait. Hold on just a second. Why does this look like a scene from National Geographic?
Actually, I'm very glad you mentioned National Geographic and animals. This behavior seems so oddly similar to this one.
This reminds me of a certain phrase in English. A parliament of baboons.
These fights can be extremely aggressive.
You know what? That scene reminds me of these two dogs at my neighbor's backyard. They were going at each other like there was no tomorrow.
You know what most dog fights are about, right? Females. Oh, those were some good times. And but you know what, Jerry? I feel really bad about what happened earlier today. We basically stooped to the level of our members of parliament.
Oh my gosh, I feel terrible too. And it's almost Christmas. We shouldn't be fighting.
You should be happy.
Plus, it's degrading to stoop to the level of our legislators.
Yeah, we're better. We're better.
Yeah, we're way better.
We're better than our MPs. We are way better.
Way
better.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's all we had prepared for you tonight. Have fun as you eat your Christmas and stay safe. And remember, not stoop to the level of a politician. Good night.
Merry Christmas.
Given the actions of our politicians in Parliament, I'd have to agree with Wilson. No stooping that low. Well, welcome back. Time for some sports news now. And KPA moved a step closer to retaining the Kenya Basketball Federation Ladies Premier League after thumping Storms 61-24 at the Nyayo Indoor Gymnasium. KPA, who lead the semi-final series 2-0, are now a win away from qualifying for the finals.
Defending champions KPA's determination to retain the championship played out today as they faced Storms in Game 2 of the semi-finals. Despite Violet Wanyama getting the first points for the Dockers, Storms were determined to live by their name as they took a 10-6 lead in the first quarter. This, however, did not sink in well with KPA, who gave a resounding response in the second quarter, making 23 points to Storms 7 and thereby taking a 29-13 lead at halftime. Storms' effort to revive their hopes of getting back in the game were thwarted, as Linda Alando made 8 points to give her team a 42-22 advantage in the third quarter. In the final quarter, the Dockers made a massive 19 points, leaving Storms with only a 2-point response to bag the game with a 61-24 win.
Na mwaka huu timu yangu kwa kweli ni nzuri, kwa hiyo matarajio ni mengi, na kama itakuwa sitashinda mwaka huu itakuwa ni bahati mbaya, lakini na matarajio makubwa sana kuwa tutashinda.
It's gonna go to the wire. Like, we are not letting go of anything. We are very sure we are gonna win it, in that we have the advantage that it's gonna be back in Mombasa.
KPA now only need one win to qualify for the finals. However, Storms are vowed to get crashed into their party.
Yes, we have to win 3 games back to back. Otherwise, if we lose another 1 game, we are out. We really have no option but to win 3 games.
The league playoffs take a Christmas break and will resume early next month. Robinson Okenye, KTN Sports.
To some golf news now, and long-hitting George Munyao posted a round total of 227 gross points to emerge the overall winner of the 2014 Nyali Open Golf Championship that ended at the Par 71 Nyali Golf and Country Club course in Mombasa this afternoon. The home club handicap 3 golfer and former golf national team member becomes the 3rd coastal golfer to win the championship that was started in 1992. Munyao, who was the overnight leader on 213 gross on Saturday when the 2 days and 54 holes event started, was 3 strokes ahead of Vet Labs' Robinson Owiti, who tied on the same gross with Muthaiga's Jeff Kubwa. Nyali's Dixon Baraza was the net winner with 212 net, and the same golfer who teamed up with clubmate Solomon Majanga, who were inter-club winners on 436 net. 96 amateurs drawn across the country with handicaps of below 14 participated in the event. To some analysis now, Napoli plays Juventus in a match that is expected to be a closely contested match, even as Juventus enjoy the bragging rights in the Italian Serie A.
Welcome to today's Sports Pesa Match Analysis. I'm your host, Hassan Juma, and of course I'm joined by my resident analyst, Ida. Ida, yes. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Juma.
Let's go to Serie A a little bit. Juventus versus Napoli. You know, Juventus are patched at the summit of the league log.
Yes.
Is it more or less like a one-way traffic against Napoli?
The thing about Juventus is, as a team, the tricky thing that they've managed to actually do is they've merged all current generations of teams. You have right now the more experienced players, for example, Pirlo, Buffon, a fantastic player. You have much less experienced players, but still very good. For example, the likes of Tevez and Evra. And then now you have the much more younger players who are very sensational still, talking about the likes of Paul Pogba. So I think all these factors put together have made Juventus what they are right now in terms of the dominance. Yeah.
I'm looking at Napoli, and you know, this Napoli has won 4 times, you know, in their meeting, and Juventus has won 3. It's a close call.
It is.
It's a very closed, it's a very tight match.
Yes, you can look at it from that perspective of, yes, it is very tight, but actually if you just look at it on a one-on-one basis in terms of form, team form, Juventus are really ahead, because if you just look at the last 15 games that they have each played, Napoli have just actually won 6, they've drawn 6, and they've lost 3, yeah? But when you look at a team like Juventus, they've actually won 11, and they've drawn 3, and they've lost 1. So it's also about the informed players. The fact that Allegri's men right now have a very good starting lineup. I mean, even when they have injuries, because, for example, right now, they have several injuries. For example, Storari is out, Bonucci might also be out, but they still have good players who can act as backup for the 3-5-2 formation, and they have key performance players in every department. You have the attack that has Tevez, you have the midfield that is very strong with people like Pogba, who is very informed, getting in good assists, getting in good goals. You have Pirlo. You look at the defense, you have Ebra, you have Bonucci, and of course, you have the wonderful goalkeeper Buffon, who has kept several clean sheets.
What's your prediction?
My prediction for this, considering how good Juventus are right now with their attack and just how weak Napoli are with the defense, I'm going for a 3-0, of course, to Juventus. Yes.
3-0 for Juventus. I mean, that's my resident analyst, Ida, and she feels that Juventus is going to win 3-0. What's your prediction? What's your will? What do you think of the match? SMS game 79079, or go to our website, sportspesa.com. Talk to us.
All right, let's take some feedback from the discussion on Checkpoint. Paulina says, my take, insecurity is the one big negative in the Jubilee government. We must fight to ensure it's not sorted until 2017. And Lawrence Mwangi says, the law may be good, but was the process right? In the last 2 years, security deteriorated. Anything Jubilee does? ? Street Nakuru says, looking forward to the day when they will tear each other up debating anti-corruption laws. Very good point there. In terms of the priorities that our parliamentarians have, and that's where we'll leave it on Checkpoint tonight. Of course, you can continue this conversation online. We will be following it and seeing what we can get out of your own comments to be able to spin out some interesting stories and deepen the facts with which we report. Thank you very much for joining us on KTN Weekend Prime. My name is John Allen. Have a good night, and because I'm not going to see you until next week, Merry Christmas to all of those who are Christian celebrating the holiday. Have a good night.